Thank you all for coming here to join us in this exciting celebration today. My name is Howard Lucas. I'm a social entrepreneur, innovator, visionary, and someone who really wants to change the world, and I hope you all want to do the same.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Priscilla Espinosa. I am also a member of the Social Venture Collaborative. I am an inventor, activist, and social entrepreneur. Thank you for coming today. We have an exciting event. We have a lot of great panelists, and I wanted to share with you that we are absolutely delighted to have an inspiring regional event at the Worcester State University for the second year in a row.
The Social Venture Collaborative connects and supports the work of socially, environmentally focused ventures that promote justice, equity, and resilience in central New England and across the globe. Social ventures include social enterprises, social businesses, and cooperatives. Through collaboration and coordination and resource development, the SVC aims to strengthen a growing ecosystem of social entrepreneurs by convening social change practitioners, professionals in academia, public and private sectors, as well as students and social entrepreneurs.
As you go through your day, I hope you have time to reflect on the relationship between your wide-ranging interests and the complementary interests of Worcester State. Through the Center for Social Innovation and through other points of contact, the university is vitally interested in generating and supporting social innovation and entrepreneurship. So we hope that you look at us not simply as a host institution, a nice place to be on a balmy spring afternoon, but a partner in developing ideas and initiatives that will bring us to a just, equitable, and sustainable world in which the dignity of individuals and communities is an integral part of economic thinking.
Do a musical welcome for you today. We have a choir that is organized as a social business. It's called Joyful Noise.
will never spread the word of hate and fear. These walls so deep inside us, with all your heart and soul, reach out and make us whole. Can you hear us sing, shouting, praying, rise up together when the heart calls. Take down, break down, 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 take down these
Have you ever wished that someone would compile the most hopeful, innovative, daring, contagious, beautiful solutions from our movements? Maybe something that amplifies the stories from the front lines through galleries, photos, videos, interactive labs, and even a book. Well, Rachel Plattis and her collaborators have done such a thing. It's called Beautiful Solutions. And have you ever wished that you could hear a keynote address from someone who has actually worked tirelessly in the trenches, organizing on the local, regional, national, and international levels? Someone maybe that's worked with Occupy Boston, climate justice movements, the New Economy Coalition, someone who has a deep commitment to racial, economic, and gender justice. Well, you get to hear from someone just like that today. So I'm excited to announce and welcome up Rachel Plattis, co-creator of Beautiful Solutions.
Good morning. All right, let's see if you're awake. Please, everybody stand as you are able and willing. And you're going to repeat after me. And Thea will let me know if I'm not being loud enough. Ready? Solid as a rock.
solid as a rock.
We are rooted like a tree.
We are rooted like a tree.
We are here.
We are here,
Standing strong.
standing strong
In our rightful place.
in our rightful place.
Solid as a rock.
Solid as a rock.
We are rooted like a tree.
We are rooted like a tree.
We are here.
We are here,
Standing strong.
standing strong
In our rightful place.
in our rightful place.
You're awake. Good morning. How are y'all doing this morning? Can you hear me? Yeah? Good. So I first learned that song supporting fossil fuel divestment campaigns on college and university campuses across the country when I was organizing with the New Economy Coalition. And later I got to learn more about that song and many of our other songs of resistance at the Highlander Research and Education Center in Newmarket, Tennessee, where they sing it with their Seeds of Fire youth program, among many others. It's a good one, so it shows up all over the place. passed on from movement to movement and organizer to organizer, the way I just did today. What does that mean to you, to be standing strong in your rightful place? Standing for what? Standing for whom? I believe that we are in our rightful place. I also know that the land we are stretching our roots down into does not belong to us. Both because land does not belong to anyone, and because we claim ownership of this land that was taken care of and stewarded for generations by Native peoples who were murdered and displaced to make room for our way of life, a way of life that we are here today to question and to imagine beyond. In particular today, I want to acknowledge the Nipmuc tribe as past, present, and future caretakers of this land that we're sitting on. I want to acknowledge the Pocasset tribe who are with us today. And I also want to bring in the voice of an elder of the Mohegan tribe from just south of here, near where I grew up in southern Connecticut. Her name was Gladys Tantaquidgeon, a tribal council member, medicine woman, Ivy League trained anthropologist, and when she died in 2005 at the age of 106, the oldest surviving member of the Mohegan tribe. She was known to say, "You can't hate someone that you know a lot about." I believe this too, that you can't truly hate someone that you know a lot about. And I believe in this intense moment of othering, when those in power have normalized direct and hateful othering of entire groups of people to feed fear and consolidate their own power, that we ought to figure out pretty quick how to get to know about each other. If not hating each other was the best we could do, that would be pretty good. But other things happen too when we know about each other. We can grow to trust each other, and we can practice making decisions together. We can begin to gather up what we know about each other and map it, using it to figure out what we have and what we need. We can pool our resources and make collective decisions about how to use those resources to meet our needs. This kind of knowing each other, being in relationship with each other so we can figure out how to meet our community's needs together, is what we're here to do today. I would also argue that this kind of knowing about each other is inherently anti-capitalist. Our political economy thrives on our isolation from one another. Corporations profit off of it. Hateful people get elected from it. Loneliness and fear of one another are weapons of capital. Connection is our resistance. Relationships are the foundation of the new economy, not to mention of fighting back against the rise of Trumpism and the erosion of democracy worldwide. And relationships are made of stories. When Gladys Tantaquidgeon said you can't hate someone that you know a lot about, I don't think she was talking about knowing high school dropout or incarceration rates, or household incomes, or even who people probably voted for in the last election. All of those knowings speak to systems, which, by the way, I think we should be encouraged to hate when they are oppressive and extractive and violent. Relationships help us to distinguish between our understandings of the people and our understanding of the systems, and then to change the system without throwing away the people. So let's tell some stories. What has made you laugh so hard you peed your pants a little? Happens to me regularly. When did you feel most at home in the world? When the unimaginable happens, who do you want by your side? And how did you come to trust them to hold you through the hardest moments and help you dig a tunnel out? When you close your eyes and imagine the world as you wish it could be, what does it smell like? Stories are how we connect. Stories are how we create relationships, and relationships are the fabric of the new economy. So the theme of this summit deals with resilience which is one of those words that has begun to lose all meaning from all of the many ways that we have tried to fit it into what we want it to mean. Most dictionary definitions suggest that resilience is about systems being able to absorb disruptions or shocks and go back to exactly the way they were before. This definition of resilience is extraordinary because it defies everything we know about human experience of trauma, in addition to defying the laws of physics. It also suggests that we have an experience of the system meeting all of our needs, that the hurricane or the pipeline or the shooting wreaked havoc on our perfect communities, and all we need is to go back to exactly the way we were before. So take a minute to absorb the 3 stories that were shared in your group, or 2 if you didn't get to 3, not with the goal of going back to the way you were, but with the goal of being changed by what you've heard. And now think about all of the stories in this room that you didn't hear, all of the ones you will hear throughout the day, and how those stories will change you. This is what happens in an ecosystem. Which of you, when you close your eyes and imagine the world as you wish it could be, imagine something that is exactly the way it was before? Try it. If you want, you might close your eyes while I bring 3 other stories into the room, straight from the pages of Beautiful Solutions' upcoming book. In addition to those who gave interviews about their stories, I want to acknowledge my partner in many things, Eli Figali, who's sitting right there, who conducted the interviews that you're going to hear about and served as editor for these stories. Scene 1. Imagine you are a worker at a British-owned cement company in Hidalgo, about an hour from Mexico City, and the company is on the verge of bankruptcy. To save your jobs, you and 191 of your coworkers leave and start your own cooperative, which you call Cruz Azul. To protect against the original British ownership, the state government of Hidalgo buys the factory and puts it under the administration and ownership of the workers. In 1952, encouraged by a Mexican law that says that cooperatives should have a social provision fund that includes resources for sports, education, health, and other community programs, Cruz Azul founds a sporting club. Soon, Cruz Azul recognizes the potential for this club to reach the broader community, expanding to include non-co-op members, and then developing from recreational to professional. It doesn't take long for Cruz Azul to become a winning team in Mexico, driving investment to the cooperative. It's easy to convince members to invest in the soccer team when the team is winning and drawing huge crowds to the community. Over the years, Cruz Azul's soccer team has been one of the most important means of publicity and outreach for the cement cooperative. Each game, thousands of people flock to Azul Stadium, making the Cruz Azul brand one of the most recognizable in Mexico, a major marketing advantage. In addition to 4 cement factories across Mexico, around 25 other Cruz Azul enterprises serve the factories and the surrounding community, each with their own management structure linked to the other communities to the other companies through shared economic activity and a culture of mutual aid. For example, a transportation cooperative specializes in moving raw materials to their facilities for processing. Other businesses create employment and serve the needs of the community, not just the sporting club, but also a medical company, hotel, retirement association, health center, social service charity, and an educational center serving more than 3,000 students from kindergarten through high school, which you can see up there. Surplus funds are used to finance projects that the community wants to start that are often ineligible for banking or government funding. Finally, Cruz Azul has 2 cooperative cities with a high concentration of Cruz Azul cooperative members and businesses. In these cities, Cruz Azul has created schools, shopping centers, sporting centers, and health facilities to serve all those living in the area, hoping to bring the cooperative principles to life across entire cities. Scene 2. Imagine you are a woman in Japan in the mid-1960s trying to feed your family in the face of soaring food prices. You decide to organize and start a buying club to purchase milk. Today, this group is a consumers cooperative called the Seikatsu Club, with more than 370,000 members, 95% of whom are women. They still buy milk, but now they own the factory and the trucks to ship it too. Over the past 5 decades, Seikatsu Club's founding members, as with Japan's population as a whole, have aged considerably. While these women continue to be active and integral members, the club cannot survive into the future without recruiting the younger generation. They have focused their outreach on young parents, many of whom are concerned about the safety and the security of their food, especially following the Fukushima nuclear disaster in 2011. By investing in consumer education, Seikatsu Club added 60,000 new members under the age of 44 in 2015 alone. Yuriko Ito, a Seikatsu Club board member and managing director of their mutual aid union, says this about how Seikatsu started. These were the days when the Japanese economy was growing very rapidly. Prices of food were rising rapidly. More than 200 housewives got together and started a collective purchasing of milk to defend themselves against the rising food prices. And this was the start of the club. This is what is generally stated, but I would like to give my interpretation. Japan lost World War II. In the 1960s and 1970s, young people were eager to contribute to the democratic society. There were many political and economic movements. It was always men in the mainstream of those activities. Women in those days lost their identity. They were called Mrs. X, a wife of someone, a mother of children. The collective purchasing of the milk gave them a window of opportunity, a trigger to get active in society. They didn't stop there. They tried to understand the mechanism of the price of milk and food and to figure out how the milk should be produced, looking at a problem inherent to society. There has been a rapid increase in women who are interested in being more involved in engaging the fundamental issues of society. Y'all still with me? One more? Yeah. Scene 3. Imagine you live in the slums of Nairobi. It is the mid-1990s, and your neighborhoods are plagued by evictions and demolitions. You join a new effort to organize your fellow slum dwellers, Muungano. Community members organized to resist private development like shopping centers and the forced evictions that come with it. Through years of militant struggle, Muungano prevails, stopping the evictions and setting off a movement throughout Nairobi that spreads across Kenya. In 2017, Muungano has 2 main demands: secure tenure and access. Secure tenure means that every slum dweller, informal trader, and squatter should have a title and deed that recognizes their right to use the land. Access means every slum dweller should have access to clean water, health, basic services, and housing, among other human rights described in the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Muungano emphasizes the community's power to protect its rights, land, and livelihood, and pushes for recognition of the slums as critical spaces for both their inhabitants and the entire city. The movement does not depend on outside help or financial support. Instead, it emphasizes people organizing themselves within the informal settlements. Joseph Maturi of Muungano says, within Muungano, everything is a process. Everything we do is not a project. The data we collect, the saving, it's something that has a life of its own, a process that will continue. After this generation is gone, there will be another generation to continue. The generation of leaders we have now, how do they get the history of this struggle? How do they know Muungano to be 20 and to be where it is? People sacrificed, people died, People sacrifice their jobs, careers, families for us to be here. Part of returning that spirit is connecting the old and the new. Sheila Patel of Slum Dwellers International has this to say about the process of organizing in slums. First thing we do, we help every community to document who they are. You document the details of all the members, and you sit together and work out what your priorities are. The big thing that this does is it turns the I am poor, I have these needs, to we are so many of us, these are our needs. It's a big jump, and it's a very transformative process. Now, imagine putting up a new tower and offering municipal or community-controlled broadband for everyone who is sick of being exploited by big internet providers. Imagine creating laws inspired by those in Emilia-Romagna in Italy or in Quebec, creating government subsidies for cooperatives, tax-exempt reserves to support cooperative development, or designated legal status for different types of cooperatives, including multi-stakeholder social co-ops, which I wish I could give another 45-minute talk about. Now, imagine a vibrant new economy ecosystem in central New England. What does it feel like when you start your day's work? What does it sound like when a big storm comes? What does it look like when ice shows up in your community? How do you grieve? How and what do you celebrate? Think again about those moments that you have tasted that world as you wish it could be. And if you still have your eyes closed for the last half hour, you can open them. So, I shared some true stories about resilience the way I would define it. People and communities in relationship with one another, assessing their needs, and pooling their resources to meet those needs in ingenious ways. This is what Beautiful Solutions is about. We support people around the world to tell stories about how they are building new economies, and we develop popular education curriculum for community groups to learn together how to do the mapping and pooling of resources that can support a new economy ecosystem where they live. We have a web platform, an upcoming book, which will look a little bit like that, and a training program to support these efforts. The stories I shared, and many of the stories featured in Beautiful Solutions, describe these basic building blocks of mapping and of pooling our resources. Participatory mapping of our communities allows us to identify needs, gaps, and resources to develop a plan of action. Pooling our resources allows us to make collective decisions about how to allocate resources to implement the plan. Throughout this process, we are called to balance planning and emergence, will and surrender. We cannot plan for everything, but we need a plan. We have to listen to what is, to the changing conditions around us, but we cannot wait for things to happen to us. So I want to finish up by saying a little bit about how we think about storytelling at Beautiful Solutions, and to name a discomfort that I have in standing in front of you today. We created Beautiful Solutions as a way for people to tell their own stories. And I've been invited here today to share some of those stories about experiences that are not my own. For me, this is both impossible to do perfectly and so important to do as well as I can whenever possible. I try to bring the words and interpretations of the people who did the work. I try to tell you about why these stories are important to me, how I have experienced hearing these people tell their stories, and how that has influenced my work. Just like we can interact with this land we stand on in extractive ways, stories can be used in damaging and extractive ways. We have a responsibility when telling stories to speak our truth and to figure out through dialogue and reflection what it means to be accountable to the people in the stories we tell. When I sing with you and tell you about where I learned a song, I feel accountable to a lineage of movements and of cultural organizers who wrote, taught, and sang that song. When I tell you about Jorge Fernandez and Cruz Azul, or Yuriko Ito and the Seikatsu Club, or Joseph Muturi of Mungano, I think about how learning from beautiful solutions can be translated and shared with their communities. When I tell you about Gladys Tansaquidjan, I think about what it means to be accountable to her legacy, what it means to steward this place that she called home, to hold the multiple truths of being in my rightful place and carrying a legacy of violence and displacement. I think about my responsibilities as a guest of this land and these creatures and these people, even as this place may be where I feel most at home. A guest and at home. Multiple truths. I would argue that the work of building new economy ecosystems is how we fulfill those responsibilities, understanding ourselves both as visitors to this soil and as members of our home communities, being resilient not by staying the same, but by creating change, standing strong in our rightful place. So I want to close with a piece of a poem by Adrienne Rich called Dreams Before Waking. What would it mean to live in a city whose people were changing each other's despair into hope? You yourself must change it. What would it feel like to know your country was changing? You yourself must change it. Though your life felt arduous, new and unmapped and strange, what would it mean to stand on the first page of the end of despair? Thank you.